Hello, Adulting with ADHD fam. Sarah here with an announcement. This summer, we're hitting replay on some of our all-time favorite episodes. And as always, if you want to catch them all, visit patreon.com/adultingwithadhd. This is the Adulting with ADHD podcast, self-empowerment for people with ADHD. Hi guys, just wanted to pop in here and set up this episode for you a bit. This is a wonderful conversation I had with Sari Solden. As most of you guys know, Sari is a psychotherapist who has counseled adults with ADHD for over 30 years. She is the author of the books Women with Attention Deficit Disorder, Journeys Through Adulthood, and she's the co-author of A Radical Guide for Women with ADHD. In this episode, we will be talking about radical self-acceptance for women with ADHD. I really hope you enjoyed as much as I did. And the first question I had here was, well, in your own words, what does it mean to practice radical self-acceptance when you're a woman with ADHD?
Right. Well, I guess it goes down to a deeper issue of what radical acceptance is, which isn't really only about what I have in the book. It's radical acceptance, I think, goes back to just basic Buddhist principles, and then Marshall Linehan uses it in dialectic behavioral therapy, and especially in acceptance commitment therapy, which is a great approach too. I think all these things in mindfulness, I think at one point they all started to coalesce, and I didn't take my approach from them, but at one point when there seemed to be a lot written about this, I recognized that my approach to women with executive function problems really aligns well with this. And so then I started looking a little bit more into those principles. So I'll just talk about the deepest idea about radical acceptance, which I think can be applied very well to effective treatment for women with ADHD, is this idea of the difference between pain and suffering. This is really the basis for radical acceptance, that we all experience pain and adversity and difficulties in life. Some of them are acute, like from a loss. Some of them are chronic, and even chronic pain. There's a lot of painful things in life that are difficult to deal with, but they become suffering by what we do to ourselves because of the pain, the way we try to run away from the pain, or say it's not fair, or disavow ourselves from what's happening to the so acceptance, radical acceptance, means to accept the reality of painful things that happen to all of us, and not add to it and create suffering by wishing it away and saying it's not fair and trying to avoid it and separate from it. Those are really hard concepts to get, but I think it applies to women with executive function difficulties, because women with these kind of challenges have the mindset at the beginning that they're just going to get over this, that they want to do whatever they can to fix themselves, that this isn't okay, that they have to push harder, push through. And that just creates more self-hate and more shame and more avoidance of getting out there and leading a meaningful life. So radical acceptance means just accepting that you have differences in your brain wiring and brain chemistry. That's not a description of who you are as a person, and untangling those two things so that you can deal with that chronic difficulty, as well as then go on to lead a fulfilling, meaningful life, is really the basis of especially this latest work.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that, because, well, you know this, that recently I've switched my episodes to focus more on hormones. And so it seems like that's especially a time where you really have to accept reality and you can't control it. Can you talk a little bit about, well, I mean, you really just did, but, you know.
Well, no, if I can expand, I mean, you're right. Hormones is an actual thing that happens to your body, and we have to be informed about it, first of all, so we can manage it as well as we can. When I say acceptance, I don't mean resignation, giving up, giving in, just being lost in pain. Actually, studies show that it's the opposite. When you have chronic pain, chronic struggles, the more you accept it, the less you'll feel the terrible pain. That terrible suffering comes from just can't stand it, get over it, it's not real. So hormones and ADHD, get the information, do what you can to modify your environment, to help your brain, do whatever you can in that area. But then if you understand what's happening with your hormones, whether it's, oh, this is happening premenstrually, this is happening perimenopausally, then you don't, first of all, have to be scared that this means awful things about having Alzheimer's. It doesn't mean, that, you're not scared because you get more depressed before your period. You have to understand that so that you can, normalize it and expect it, prevent it, not plan so many things during that time. So really working with your brain, that means accepting it and understanding it. So hormones are just another part of the whole piece.
You kind of answered this before, but all these ideas were coalescing, and that was how you came up with this book. Was there any moment where you're just like, this is it, I have to, did something just spur you to write this book?
Well, there was two things. There's like what happened when I started thinking about it this way, which was many years before that. And I think it was actually in a lecture about acceptance commitment therapy when I heard the approaches to chronic pain and chronic struggles described in the way that I just mentioned. And since then, for years, I was really conceiving of this idea that you can accept your brain and work on that at a parallel track of understanding that is not all of who you are and not defining yourself by those difficulties. Well, when I started working with Michelle Frank, Dr. Frank, who I met in 2013 at Detroit at a conference, and she joined my practice, I think maybe working together so closely as therapists and as women with ADHD, we'd have plenty of time to talk about what works and what doesn't. And we were both experiencing the same thing, as having these amazing women clients who we could see were just as whole women and with all these great strengths, as well as understanding their great challenges, as well as saying that the whole picture meant also putting in whatever core traits that we were delighted to be a part of, with these women, but yet they couldn't see themselves at all. They were so distorted in their view of themselves. So we started, I think the synergy of the two of us working together and talking about this and being women with ADHD made us excited to think about helping people move on to not just understanding their brains or even some of the shame that I had described earlier or identity issues, but that we wanted them to move further into after being brave and understanding the dangers they've learned about differences, to learn to actually be entitled to lead full, meaningful, bold, bright lives, to move more what we call the center of the stage and not have to stay in the background and let themselves explore how to be seen and heard and not feel so invisible, not hide and pretend, and let themselves rise up and take power in their relationships and in their life. So I think it was the synergy of us working together that helped us with this book.
Awesome. And while you were talking, it reminded me of something. It's a personal anecdote while I was working through your book. You had a part, I think it was the second chapter, and it was, identifying the messages that you hear around you growing up.
Yeah.
And I don't remember a lot. I don't have a lot of memories of growing up. A lot of it's just gone. And I do remember judging other people, like all these messages that were living in my head. I remembered bright and clearly. And of course I must have gotten them from somewhere, but it made me realize how much there is this internalized self-loathing that goes with it that I wasn't.
Yeah. And that's what I wrote about in my first, some of that in that book was referencing what I had written about in that first book so many years ago, what I call she messages, you messages. And it's really comes from Women with ADHD, the first book, because, I conceived of this whole thing from the beginning, from my background in minority mental health, and now it's all coming full circle, because the way I like to talk about this is neurodiversity. And it just comes from the larger idea of minorities or diversity, because that's where we as minorities, any minority, takes from the culture in general, absorbs what's valued and valuable. And often people in these smaller groups compare themselves to that and then internalize these negative views. And I think that's what happens to women with ADHD, even if they can't remember specifically, their family saying something negative. You learn it from every ad, every media thing, every girlfriend, every institution you're involved with, you get these very subtle messages that are so deeply internalized. I mean, it's unbelievable that women in their 20s I work with now are still feeling the way women who grew up in the 50s feel about what their job should be and what happens if they're not good at it, and the judging themselves by it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's been my biggest takeaway so far, but I'm only on chapter 2, so there's a lot to
And that was another, well, chapter 2 in the beginning, that's why we wrote this. Well, first of all, we talk about neurodiversity right off the bat, about radical acceptance really of all brains. And then as therapists, I studied, systems a lot. And so a lot of what you understand about family systems is, to the extent that you can feel that you can be different than other people, you can be healthier, that you can still be close to people and be different. And for women with ADHD who grew up not understanding that it's okay to be different, these wounds of feeling invisible and different, stay with them for a long time. That's what drives so much of their pain later on, this idea that being different is bad. And they learn that early on by how people in their family might not have put them down, but maybe talked about other people who were different or didn't value diversity in other ways.
Yeah, or talked badly about themselves, which is something
terrible. Yeah, I've had women clients say, I don't know why my daughter, it has such low self-esteem. And then this woman would be calling herself a slob or saying bad things about herself. And so we learn, we as women with differences or difficulties can model to our children, not just what it means to be perfect. You don't have to pretend that. You can show them what you do when you struggle, and that everybody struggles.
Yeah, I come across that a lot in my parenting material, of the importance of that and the importance of your children seeing you modeling how you respond to imperfect situations and how important it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because so many women say, oh, I hope my kids don't have this, or I would feel bad if they have this, or how can I keep them from feeling this, difficulty. It's more of that radical acceptance, causing all that other suffering, versus saying, okay, I have these struggles. This is what I do. And, we all are different. We all have good, strengths. We all have difficulties. So help each other.
Yeah. And I love how the movies that are coming out now for children also are embracing those ideas, because that's kind of, children are learning a lot through the movies they're watching. So it's encouraging after all those, like you said, all the negative messages that you come across of. It's, yeah.
I think it is. I am starting to see a difference now for the first time when I'm talking to a lot of young women are interviewing me now. A lot of young women must have all come at age at the same time, because they're rediscovering this book, the first book. And I hear so many more younger people, probably because of the way younger millennials maybe embrace diversity more and accept differences more, that I've had many more young clients now say, you know what, I told my supervisor that this is how I process information and I need help, or I told them that this is what I need and they helped me. I mean, I never heard that. And I'm hearing that more and more, learning to just describe how you operate and what you need. And I never heard that before. I'm hearing that much more now.
Hi there, it's Sarah again. Hope you are enjoying the replay. I'm thrilled to announce a new tier for the show, Friends of the Show. This exclusive Patreon tier offers some sweet perks for those who want to show extra support and also get their name out there. To get started, visit patreon.com/adultingwithadhd. Please note that some restrictions apply. That is one thing I've really enjoyed about watching the younger generations come up, is they're not afraid to talk about their feelings. That's something we never did growing up. It was like huge taboo. So yeah, it's very interesting to see that happening.
It is, yeah.
I wanted to go back to what you were talking about with ACT, because I don't know if that's a common practice among therapists, but I remember hearing that a lot when I was going through therapy in the beginning, was the ACT therapy. So among therapists, is that something that's commonly used? And also I'm pairing that with, radical self-acceptance also. You can answer both.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's common. I mean, it's funny. I mean, there's a contemporary psychotherapy that has to do with the things I just mentioned, that see things in that way, which have to do with the way my core principles that I teach of person over pathology and self over symptoms and seeing a person whole. And I think that's one way of certain kinds of therapists understanding this, more rooted in like Tara Brach, who wrote Radical Acceptance, or Stephen Hayes. But, there's other people who are much more cognitive oriented when it comes to
Yeah.
ADD. And I think there's two different schools of thought. It's funny, when I started teaching therapists, I think there's a lot of therapists who aren't ADD specialists who actually see clients in the way I'm describing. And I think that, and they say, yeah, of course. But when I talk to a lot of people who might describe themselves as ADHD specialists, they don't so much. They've been taught more about tips, tools, strategies, academia. I think there's a long way to start thinking, okay, now we have to move back from that alone to help people see the deep wounds and complexity, especially for women, because they weren't diagnosed early, and understand the effect on your sense of self, and not treat it just like some academic kind of organizational issue. It is all that, but the kind of person versus a separate kind of client versus a person who struggles with executive function and as a whole person, instead of seeing them as a separate class of person. So we just really want to work on that.
You perfectly described my experience. I mean, my therapist didn't even know I had ADHD, and I had been misdiagnosed bipolar when I met her. But the way she had treated me, her treatment still was so effective, even though she had no idea I had ADHD, because she was using the ACT principles and all that. And so it's just, I lucked out.
You're lucky, and that's interesting. And it was just because when I try to teach therapists, who are going to work with ADD, this kind of stuff, they said, well, yeah, I know that. But so it's easier, I think, to learn about ADHD once you have that general view of people, like you had that experience of, versus, some people who just think they know about ADHD, and they might know about the brain, but they don't know about human beings as much. And we have to sort of, they're not different kind of clients. They're a person who, not an ADD person, you're a person, everybody's a person. And then, then we can see what your particular struggles are. Now, knowing if you have ADHD and what kind of medication you need and how to help your brain is one route, but that's not all of you.
I agree. And for anyone listening, if you have a therapist like mine that doesn't really specialize in ADHD, I was able to supplement that with ADHD coaching. Yes,
I was just going to say that's a great combination. Now, it'd be nice for everybody to know everything eventually.
And it seems that way for a lot of medical specialties. Like, I think we've talked about this in the past, but just like you have the OBGs and then you have the psychs, and you just wish you could melt.
Right. That's the whole thing about wholeness in the medical profession, or I talk about healing instead of curing. And healing is when there's something that you just need to, really means to restore to wholeness, to help people have a sense of well-being, and not just to get over who they are, not just to, throw some medicine at them, fix it. I mean, you need to help your brain, but in the service of you as a human being, to lead a great life and to make it easier for you, but not just as the whole package. And so it's like it's a different humanistic view of human beings, I guess. You're lucky that you had found somebody who well, maybe because they didn't have ADHD, they weren't trying to fix you of it. So we just want to understand ADHD is I'm becoming very sensitized to this idea of how people pathologize themselves. You can just hear it. People who have strokes, people who have a million other things don't do that to themselves. But ADHD has a lot of stigma and misunderstanding and stereotypes that make even the person themselves feel embarrassed. I've had nuclear scientists. I've had people who are so smart and so competent, but then they're just laughing at themselves because they can't do something simple. But, those people who can do those things can't do what they do. So it's easy to develop a narrative about yourself where you just are looking at your challenges and not all of yourself.
Absolutely. And to circle back, I am very lucky. And I will tell you, I found that therapist after office hours. I was frantically calling somebody because I finally realized I needed a therapist. And it was just luck. She was the only one who answered after hours because she's a professor and she works after hours. And it was just sheer luck. And I've been seeing her for more than a decade.
Oh, wow. You are lucky. It is hard to find it. That was another question you had. I mean, and the answer to it now. Really trust yourself and find somebody with whom will work with you collaboratively and not from some kind of, patronizing kind of characterologic view of you that you just need to do this or do that. You want somebody who you feel sees you and values you and can, so you can internalize that. But someone who also doesn't minimize your difficulties. And sometimes someone will just focus on your strengths, and that's great, but you also need somebody who can help you understand your real challenges and accept them, like we're talking about, and work through them and get help for them, modify your life to fit it. But so you want someone who sees all of you.
Absolutely. And actually, I did have a situation. It was a psychiatrist where, and in my case, I just knew it wasn't going to work just by the things he was asking of me that I was unable to do for him. And it was more of a philosophical difference, I think. And so,
like, can you tell me a little bit?
I now know I was a compulsive binge drinker for a time, and he had sent me to treatment, to AA, and it just wasn't working. The program wasn't working for me, even though I took some value out of it. But to sum up a long story short, I wasn't going through the steps quickly enough for him, in my opinion. In
his opinion,
he had someone reporting to him that said I wasn't working the program, and it's a whole story. But
that's so shaming and pathologizing of me, of all things, to now be judging how quickly you're doing this.
And I'm doing it wrong, even though I was like I was earnestly going. I was going to meetings every day, and I was being really earnest. But the good side to that story is I did find someone else who took me as a whole person, and she's the one who ended up diagnosing me with ADHD. So there's a happy ending, but I followed my gut. I was like, this red flag. I gotta.
Yeah, well, that's an important thing, to follow your gut. Yeah. When you have ADHD, you don't, and then you give over your idea, your power to somebody else, and you think, well, no, you want to be open-minded. Maybe you don't know everything, but if you start feeling worse and worse about these things, and if you're not doing treatment right, in quotations. I had one psychiatrist tell my client a long time ago, like, it's such a wrong message in so many ways. This is years ago, but he said, so go home, and you have ADD, go home, take this pill, and when you clean your house, you're cured.
Whoa.
I mean, you couldn't have more wrong statements in something, but at the beginning, that's what we thought, like if cleaning your house was a sign, was the goal, and then you'd be cured, and the pill was all you need.
Ouch.
Yeah. So you don't want to be hurt by the treatment itself, in other words, is what you're saying, and what I agree with.
Yeah. And to tack on to that, it's just so much, it's so wonderful that we know so much more now than we did know. And it's just, I'm set up in a lot better place than, for example, my parents' generation. Like, we're just set up so much, better than they were, because we have more information to work off of.
No, it's really true. I'm just beginning to actually see a change in the effect on women with ADHD. So there must be a greater amount of providers who understand things in a different way. And, when I see Palooza just happened. I mean, there's a much more broader reach of professionals who understand people at a different level now. We had to move from a character, in order to move from a character description of ADHD in the old days to a medical description to get it validated. That's a pathological description in and of itself, just because we had to take it seriously. But now we're moving away from that, luckily, to less pathologizing now that we know it exists. And I really hope that we just get away from the word ADHD. It's become completely meaningless. And
yes,
I usually only say neurodiversity or executive function challenges now, because it's more descriptive. And for some reason, ADHD is just a punchline in a lot of ways. And it's so unfair and not really descriptive of the nuances of everybody with just different kinds of brain struggles. If we have 2 minutes, I'll say that I'm thinking of it now more because I have a client who's got diabetes, and it's really helpful in this radical acceptance to understand that, okay, she's got diabetes and it's very difficult to live with it. It's a chronic condition. It requires a lot of management, but she knows now when she's in a certain range, she knows, like, okay, that's a red flag. I have to do this. And so we started talking about things like, okay, well, we're this is a red flag. Now we need a dopamine boost.
Yes.
So I think about it now, like, okay, what's happening? Why am I doing this? What's the red flag here? And, what kind of dopamine boost do I need? And just thinking that more like hormonally, really, like this is out of whack now. And it's not about me. It's just, I'm out of whack. And what can I do? So like last night I was having a really hard time writing a report. I mean, I usually use music, many different kinds of music, and from jazz to classical. Last night I put, for the first time in my life, I had to put on Led Zeppelin.
I love it.
But I knew, like, okay, I got to have something to really.
It was serious now. It
was serious. My brain was not turning on, So, but I know. And then the other day I was messing up dates a whole bunch and telling people the wrong dates. And I said, okay, that's a red flag, because I don't usually do that. And it means that I'm too overloaded, and then I have to really look at it. So understanding I have to stay in this range. So people really looking at themselves like, this is radical acceptance. This is real, and it's not fun. It's miserable, and whatever it is, it's not unpainful. When I say radical acceptance, it just means we're not going to add to it. Like, oh, this isn't fair. I can't stand this. I got to get over this. I can't live like this. That's when you add suffering to the actual pain of chronic difficulties.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot why this works, is because you're not erasing that it's there. You're going through it and accepting it instead of just completely denying its existence.
Well, it doesn't work. It's exhausting, and it doesn't. The bottom line with radical acceptance is the other way doesn't work. I remember when I first started talking about radical acceptance at conferences, I had this slide, about this laundry. And because I had couples, they'd paid like for years to come to couples therapy. Finally, they got a laundry service. They accepted. They're like, no one's going to do the laundry.
I have a laundry service. I'm gonna normalize that right now.
You should, and like for women, it's all culturally based. All the women, nobody would order groceries, before the pandemic.
I know.
Even though the same services are available. Yeah. Now it's culturally approved, and everybody does it.
Yes, I was doing it way before it was cool, just for the record. I mean, it's the best
but my
thing.
clients wouldn't. So for the women who wouldn't, because they felt shame. My sister-in-law say, people were saying, but now. Yeah. So much of this is culturally determined, the shame we feel. Yeah,
absolutely. So yeah, I did come up with a few questions for a lightning round if you're up for it.
That sounded like so much fun. I've never done one of those. So what's the point of it? I look like fun.
Yeah, I've never done one either. You're the first. Well, I think
I've seen it on TV. I've seen it, but I've never done it.
I was thinking of Stephen Colbert, and I was giggling because I remember him doing that sometimes. Like, he would just ask someone just some random questions. Right. So I just Googled lightning round, and it's a thing. Oh. So I just pulled a few off of.
And it's like what I like, or what I resonate with, or what I prefer.
Yeah. Or something. Yeah. And you just pick one, and you don't even have to explain it. You just pick it.
That's good.
And then we chuckle, and then I ask you the other one. So, but man, if I had known about that Zeppelin, I could have really gone to town with that. Because I know that feeling. I did that. For me, I was in the garage this weekend, and for me, it was Lady Gaga. It was like, okay.
Oh, yeah.
The usual stuff isn't working. Like, usually I do a podcast, and it's like, all right, Lady Gaga, here we go.
But knowing that, and knowing you have I guess having a repertoire of things that work for you is what's important, Okay, this is fun.
Yeah, lightning round. Okay, Here we go. Cats or dogs?
Oh yeah, dogs.
Okay. Outside of working hours, texting or talking?
Texting, 100%.
Yeah, I totally get that. Favorite city in the world?
Oh, this is an either or. Right?
Yeah, you're right. But okay.
Okay. Well,
I can give you an either or. Hold on.
Oh, give me a couple either or, because I have a few. So.
Yeah, West Coast or East Coast?
Ooh,
what does that mean?
Equal. Yeah.
Okay.
Equal. And also, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic. Used to be New York City, but now I don't want to go into the city right now, so it's harder.
Yeah. That's a good enough answer.
Okay.
Okay, this one was interesting. Would you rather be able to speak every language or talk to animals?
Wow. speak every language. I wouldn't want to speak it. Talk to animals.
Yeah, animals are cool. Okay.
I like animals.
And then just your favorite holiday or your favorite time of year.
Oh, well, I hate holidays really because I mean,
Yeah.
no, it's terrible. Like that's like a big admission. Like when Biden was talking the other day, I have to say, I felt like, oh, everything he was saying we want to get back to. I don't want to do those things. So I felt really bad. Like, I hate barbecues. I hate giving events. Right? I hate parties. So this is a big admission, like I don't want to get back to that. But yeah, my favorite, what was it? Favorite holiday or what?
You could say like time of year if you don't like holidays.
Oh, time of year. Yeah. I love the fall.
Same. Yeah.
I love the fall. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Hands down. Thanksgiving.
As long as I don't have to give an event or go to one, I like the seasons. So
yes, absolutely. I feel the same way.
It's an ADD thing.
It must be. Although my father he is antisocial, so he's just like, no, I don't want any. He's been in his element the whole time.
I know. I did that whole workshop the other day. The speech I gave for pandemic for the whatever the Palooza was about post-pandemic transitions for women with ADHD, because the hidden secret is that many introverted, inattentive ADHD felt a great deal of relief from all those social pressures.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to tell the listeners about that, the ADHD Women's Palooza. I do want to catch that. So you did do the topic of transitioning after?
I did a post-pandemic transition, because I don't want people to feel guilty or confused that for a lot of women, there's been, besides all the other terrible things, and for everybody, for the segment of women, there was a lot of relief and lessening of pressure of all these logistics, coordination, picking up, dropping off, schedules, blah, 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 getting dressed, giving events, going to events, all that stuff, party planning.
Yes.
So I'm giving a I don't know when this is going to think, but I decided to give a one day anyway, post-pandemic transition workshop for us to get together and talk about it,
Nice.
So it's a secret that some women have. Like, I don't want it, or they're afraid, or they don't really want to get back out there fully. So you should take away what's important to you after this year and what you don't want to go back to, and be intentional about it.
Love it. So where can the listeners keep in touch with you and hear about things like this workshop?
Okay. Well, they can go to Sari. They can always email me at Sari@SariSolden.com, or they can come to SariSolden.com, the website. Okay. Or I try to post things at ADHDRadicalGuide.com. That's our blog. So yeah, you can write to me about any of these things.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you, Sari, so much. It was a pleasure to have you.
Oh, that was so much fun, Sarah. Yeah, thank you. All right. Bye.
Bye-bye. I've always wondered if weighted blankets could help me with anxiety. During the pandemic, it was the perfect opportunity to find out. Ever since the first night I have slept with my weighted blanket, I have had very relaxing sleep. Don't deal with insomnia nearly as often. And at a point where I don't want to sleep without it. It is that awesome. To find out which blanket I use, it's just so comfortable and so beautiful. Go to adultingwithadhd.com/mosaic and you'll see my favorite one, and there's many, many others to choose from.